Why do some people think that Donald Trump is the Messiah? And what's happening with the Third Temple? Judaism teaches that the Messiah will build the Third Temple. And recently, a Jewish reporter asked Trump's press secretary if Trump plans to build it.
He's likely going to go down as the greatest builder of this era. And you've been in on a lot of those meetings with him. Has, to your knowledge, has the subject of rebuilding the Holy Temple in Jerusalem come up?
Does this Jewish reporter think that Trump is the Messiah? In this video, we'll look at why many Jews believe the Messiah could come now, which prophecies Trump fits, which prophecies he doesn't, at least not yet. And at the end, I'm going to say something that will completely change how you look at this entire topic. So watch till then. And also, just in case you're wondering, everything that I say in this video is fully backed up by Jewish texts. There's no conspiracy theories. In fact, I gathered together all the sources I used to make this video and I put them in the description, so please feel free to go through them. Okay, so we need to start by understanding why some Jews think the Messiah could appear now, because unless you understand the timing, this speculation about Trump makes zero sense.
I am the chosen one.
A core belief in Judaism, especially Orthodox Judaism, is the belief that the Messiah will one day arrive and will usher in an era of peace and prosperity. Judaism also teaches that the Messiah could come at any moment, in any year, in any generation. But some Jews believe that today the odds are higher than ever because of a set of ancient prophecies that may now be unfolding. Let's look at 3 of them, and you'll also start to see how Trump enters the picture. The first prophecy comes from the Talmud. The Talmud was written 1,500 years ago and records prominent rabbis discussing and debating Jewish law and theology. In one section, rabbis discuss the timeline of the world. They say that the world will exist for 6,000 years, which is divided into 3 stages of 2,000 years each. The third stage, which is the last 2,000 years, is supposed to be when the Messiah will come. And according to Jewish calendar, we are currently in the year 5786, meaning based on this timeline, the Messiah might appear at any time. The second prophecy is that the Messiah will appear during a major war. But the issue is, we don't know exactly what this war will look like. It might include the state of Israel, but also might not. What is for certain is that if we look at modern history, there's been 2 world wars, 2 nuclear bombs dropped, the Cold War, and just endless conflict. Maybe one of these is a fulfillment of the prophecy and is a sign that the Messiah is coming soon. Once again, we don't know for sure, but because there's been so many wars, and even today there's always a possibility of a 3rd World War, which might also even include nuclear weapons, many people think that the Messiah is closer than ever. And here's where Trump gets pulled into the conversation. Think about it. Trump is currently in one of the most powerful positions in the world. So if a major war were to break out, which would fulfill this prophecy, it seems realistic to assume that Trump will likely be at the centre of it. Of course, this doesn't prove anything, but it's enough for some people to stop pointing to Trump and ask, is there a connection between him and the prophecy? The next one is about Israel, that when the Messiah comes, there will be an independent Jewish state in the biblical land of Israel. But there is already a Jewish state of Israel that exists. It was established in 1948. So the question is, where is the Messiah? Why isn't he here yet? Well, this is a huge debate within Judaism. Have you ever seen footage of ultra-Orthodox Jews protesting against Israel? As you can see, their sign reads, Judaism rejects Zionism and the State of Israel. One of the reasons they're protesting is because they, and hundreds of thousands of other Jews around the world, believe it's forbidden to create such a state before the Messiah comes. From their perspective, Israel's existence actually delays the coming of the Messiah. But there are many Jews that believe the complete opposite, that the State of Israel is part of the messianic process, that the country's existence is necessary to bring the Messiah. From this perspective, Israel's existence actually means we are closer than ever. And this is where Trump once again enters the story. Both his harshest critics and his most zealous supporters would agree that Trump is Israel's best ally in modern history. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu goes even further and has said that Trump is one of the only 4 non-Jewish leaders in history who have dramatically advanced the Jewish state. As well as that, Trump is revered in Israel. For example, here's a song from an Israeli choir. So, if someone believes that the existence of the State of Israel brings the Messiah closer, and President Trump is the one strengthening Israel, you can see how some people start to make the connection between the two. Looking at these prophecies, there's clearly room within Judaism to say that the Messiah is more likely to appear now than at many earlier points in history. You can also see how these ideas start to point towards Trump. So the next question is simple. What does Jewish law actually require the Messiah to do, and does Trump match any of those prophecies? Well, we've already established that, according to prophecy, there will be a Jewish state in the land of Israel when the Messiah comes. But there's a second related prophecy that goes even further, that the Messiah will actually gather the Jewish people from all over the world and bring them back to Israel. So let's look at Trump. As a great ally of Israel, he's done so much to strengthen the future of the Jewish state and helping to make it a place where Jews feel safe to live in. But does that actually encourage Jews to move to Israel? Well, I think that's a very hard question to answer, as many people immigrate for all kinds of reasons. Safety, ideology, family, opportunity. It's very hard to pin it directly to Trump. So does he fulfill this prophecy? Maybe, maybe not. There's really no way of knowing. As well as that, there's another prophecy that's quite surprising. There's a rabbi named Maimonides, who's probably the most influential and authoritative rabbi of the past 2,000 years. And he writes that the Messiah does not need to perform miracles. Which means, at least in theory, the Messiah could be any human being, as they don't need to do anything supernatural to prove themselves. To me, that's really surprising, because it just feels intuitive to say that the Messiah would need to do something supernatural to prove his identity. But if miracles aren't a requirement, as Maimonides says, then in this theory, Trump could be the Messiah. It doesn't increase the likelihood that he is, but it definitely doesn't decrease it either. So up to this point, there seems to be room within Orthodox Judaism to say that Trump fits the messianic criteria. But let's look at some other prophecies to see if that's really true. And just remember, there's something at the end of the video that will change how you see the entire topic. So another prophecy is that the Messiah will restore the Davidic dynasty, meaning there won't just be a Jewish state of Israel, but there'll also be a Jewish king ruling according to Jewish religious law, similar to how things were in the time of King David. In other words, Israel would shift from being a democracy, which it is now, where citizens vote and laws are decided politically, to a theocracy, with a king and a legal system based entirely on religious law. So has Trump fulfilled this? Definitely not. He's helped strengthen Israel, but restoring a monarchy, bringing back a king, turning Israel into a state governed entirely by Jewish law, Trump has never pushed for any of this. Okay, so this prophecy is not fulfilled, at least not yet. Another requirement is that the Messiah must be a direct descendant of King David. Unfortunately, there's no way to verify Trump's ancestry 3,000 years back to ancient Israel. So this one is simply unknown. There's another prophecy that must be fulfilled. The Messiah must be deeply knowledgeable about Judaism and also strictly observant of Jewish law. Trump might secretly be well versed in Judaism, although I highly doubt it, but he's definitely not observant of Jewish law. So right now, Trump does not fit this prophecy. The next one is that the Messiah is supposed to lead a religious transformation, guiding the Jewish people back to full observance and practice of Judaism. The issue with this is that Trump himself doesn't come across as particularly religious, even though he supposedly calls himself a Christian, and he's definitely not campaigning for Jews to become more observant. Some might say that by strengthening Israel, as well as leading a religious revival in the United States, Trump is creating environments where Jewish religious life can thrive. Okay, it might be true that he's creating such environments, but to say he fulfills this prophecy seems like quite a stretch, especially as most American Jews don't believe in Judaism, so he's not doing a very good job. I think we can confidently say that Trump does not fit this requirement. And then there's the clearest criteria of all. The Messiah must build the third temple. According to the Hebrew Bible, there have already been 2 temples in Jerusalem. The first, built roughly around 3,000 years ago, and the second about 2,500. And ever since the second temple was destroyed, Jews have been waiting for it to be rebuilt. This prophecy is massive. If someone builds a third temple, they are very likely to be the Messiah. And do you remember the clip I showed you at the beginning of this video?
He's likely going to go down as the greatest builder of this era, and you've been in on a lot of those meetings with him. Has, to your knowledge, has the subject of rebuilding the Holy Temple in Jerusalem come up?
It has not. No. It has not. I don't. I'm sorry, Jake.
This Jewish reporter, Jake Turks, was asking if Trump plans to build the third temple. Basically asking, is he the Messiah? Well, I think the answer was a very, very clear no. So after looking at the Messiah checklist, Trump maybe matches some prophecies, but he clearly doesn't fulfill others. And that leads us to the last part of the video. So far, it seems pretty clear that Trump is not the Messiah because he's missing several key requirements. But here's the big twist. Maimonides writes that some of the prophecies about the Messiah are not meant to be taken literally, and we will only discover which ones are metaphorical after the Messiah arrives. In other words, no one can say with certainty what the Messiah will look like in advance, so for all we know, Trump can be the Jewish Messiah. But it gets even more confusing. When rabbis disagree about what the Messianic era will look like, what the Messiah will look like, somehow both are correct simultaneously. So if one rabbi says the Messiah will do X and another says he will actually do Y, Judaism says yes to both. And that makes this whole topic incredibly complicated. Because if some prophecies are metaphorical and conflicting opinions can somehow both be correct, then we can't confidently rule anyone out or in, including Donald Trump. So for now, all we can really do is just wait. Thank you for watching and let me know what you think in the comments.